Hi guys, I want to do a quick introduction to a review of fractions. Now I actually have a whiteboard coming in, so that'll help the review from here on out, hopefully. But very quickly today, I just have a little notebook with me, but I wanted to go over a couple things with you today. It talks about review of fractions, and this is actually going to look a little backwards to you guys. We'll get all that adjusted when I start the real review. But today, just a few reminders to you guys. Fourth grade especially, you've been doing a lot with review of fractions, things like that. So I wanted to give you guys just a very super quick review. But fractions, we know that the top number in a fraction is the numerator, the bottom number is the denominator. We also know, and let me give you guys just a quick example of this, and my drawing isn't the best here, but it'll still give us a representation. Okay, so if I started out with a pie, and it's cut into 4 parts. Okay, and I hope you guys can see that. Okay, cut into 4 parts. So my denominator tells me how many parts total there are. Okay, tells me how many parts total there are. So that is my denominator here. And again, I know that's backwards, sorry about that. All right, and my numerator is going to tell me how many pieces I have or how many pieces are left. So if I were to shade in one portion of my pie, just like this. Okay, now how many portions of my pie did I eat? Let's say that shaded portion represents what I've eaten. Okay, so I've eaten 1/4 of the pie, and I know this is going all the way back to the basics of it, but it's still a good review. So 1/4, I have 1/4 that I've eaten. Now, how many pieces do I have left? Okay, so the 1/4 is eaten. And I have 3 of those 4 pieces left. I have 3. I have 3 of the 4 pieces left. Okay. So the ones that are not shaded, there are 3 of those parts left. All right. I want to show you guys something. If I add those together, because it started out with 4 pieces, whole pieces, right? 1 has been eaten, there are 3 left. Okay, I want to show you guys what this represents. The one that was eaten, because I started out with 4 pieces, one that was eaten plus the 3 that were left, notice I only add the numerators here. That's it. Just numerators. The denominators don't change, and they have to be the same. The denominators do not change. There's 4 pieces. I started out with 4 pieces, so I ate 1 of the 4. Here I had 3 of the 4 left. I add the 1 plus the 3. That's going to give me 4. 4 of the 4 pieces. When you have 4/4 like that, it is called an improper fraction, because in a fraction, the numerator should never be the same or more than the denominator. And when something like that happens, I'll show you here. When something like that happens, you divide the denominator, the number on the bottom, into the numerator, the number on top. Well, 4 divides into 4, goes into 4, one whole time. And how many pies did I start out with? 1. I started out with 1 whole pie, cut into 4 pieces, but I had 1 whole pie. Well, that's what this represents. This whole pie, I cut it into 4 pieces. I ate 1 of the pieces here. Left 3 pieces. The 1 plus the 3 gives me 4. I have an improper fraction. Divide the 4 into the 4, which gives me 1 whole pie. Now, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that was not confusing. Something that I want to point out to you guys, we talked about factors, we've talked about reducing fractions, and reducing fractions is something that I'm noticing that fourth and fifth even test and quizzes, or even in your work, that we're not always reducing fractions. Let's say I always want my fraction in what we call in our book lowest terms. Your parents will probably recognize that. I'm sure they will. Lowest terms. You want that fraction in the lowest terms possible. Let me give you an example here. If you have 2/4, and I'm doing this because of the pie I have represented up here, so hopefully that'll help make sense. 2 and 4. 2 and 4 are both even numbers, which means they're both divisible by 2. Okay, we're going back to our divisibility rules and talking about how that works, and we'll cover that again in some of these reviews. But 2/4. Okay, if you were to reach that answer as a part of a problem that you're working out in your book, and you get 2/4, your answer is 2/4. It's not incorrect, but the fraction can be reduced to lowest terms. And ever since we've learned that, whether it be a test or quiz, whether it says it or not, it wants your fractions reduced to lowest terms. If it's an improper fraction, they want that corrected. Even once, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, I'll stop right there for now. So 2/4. 2/4, it's an even, they're both even numbers, 2 and 4. They can be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 leaves me with 1. 4 divided by 2 leaves me with 2. Okay. So I divided 2 by 2 and 4 by 2, and it gave me 1/2. Notice something I want to show you guys. If I had 2 of these pieces here, I have half of the pie. Look here. Half. The 2/4 reduces to 1/2 because I have half. I have 1/2 of this pie, and I have a half left. 2/4. So I have 2 of these 4. Okay. Now, I know that is a very simple review, very quick review. We can do larger fractions. We could do something like, let's say if you were to wind up with 6/3, let's just say. That winds up being your answer, 6/3. Well, obviously that's an improper fraction. When we have an improper fraction, you divide the bottom number into the top number. 3 will go into 6. How many times? 2 times, right? So you have the whole number 2 as your answer. 2 would be the correct answer. 6/3 would not be the correct answer. Okay, 2. All right, another thing I wanted to point out to you guys. In the case where you have an improper fraction, let's say I have 13/6. Let's just say that, 13/6. That's definitely an improper fraction. Definitely an improper fraction. I'm going to divide the 6 into the 13. 6 goes into 13 twice because that would give us 12, right? 2 times 6 will give us 12. So 6 would go into 13 2 times. 2 whole times. Well, what's 13 minus 12? 1. So we have 1/6. So our answer would be 2 and 1/6. 2 and 1/6. Let's see. Let's try. I want to do one more of those. Let's see. What about 16? 16/3. What about something like this? 16/3. Well, 3 will definitely fit into 16. Well, how many times? Let's see. 3 times 4 would give us 12. 3 times 5 would give us 15. So that's closer. So it would fit in there 5 times. 5 whole times. And what is 16 minus 15? And this will be a little easier with our whiteboard. But 16 minus 15 will leave me with 1. So I'd have 5 and 1/3. because our remainder is always written as a fraction. And again, I apologize that being backwards, so that's a situation I am going to remedy. All right, and then when you are adding or subtracting fractions, you always have to have what we call a common denominator, okay? Common denominator. An example, common denominator, as a matter of fact, I'm looking at the 4th grade book right now. I'm just looking at a few, let's see. Don't get too far ahead. I want to look at addition with subtraction, with fractions first. We'll talk about some subtraction as well. Here we go. 1/4 plus 1/2. So 1/4 plus 1/2. And we're going to add. And the problem here is the fact that you have to have a common denominator. The denominators have to be the same because you only add or subtract numerators, the top number. So in order for me to do that, I have to find what we call an equivalent fraction. Okay, an equivalent fraction means that it equals basically the same thing. Let me show you an example right here. The 2/4 and the 1/2, they are equivalent fractions. They're actually the exact same thing because 2 of the 4 pieces gives you half of that pie. They're really the same thing. It looks like they're not, but they really are. They're exactly the same thing. Okay. So with my 1/4 and my 1/2, common denominator, what number is large enough for 4 to fit into it evenly and 2 to fit into it evenly? There are many cases when the denominator that you need is actually there. One of the fractions already has it. And in this case, it's 4. So you have 4. Add 1/4 as the first number. Okay, so I just leave it as 1/4. Write an equal sign in, write it as 1/4. Now, the second number was 1/2. Well, 2 times 2 would give me 4. Let me show you what I'm doing here. The 1/4, 4. 4 can go into 4 one time evenly. 2 can go into 4 2 times. So I'm going to multiply by 2 to give me a 4 on the bottom, but whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top to make them equal. So 2 times 2 would give me, or 2 times 1, I'm sorry, would give me 2. Now in this case, I have 1/4 plus 2/4, and that's okay. I'm not subtracting. If I were subtracting, that would be a problem, but I'm not. So now I can just add the numerators, 1 plus 2, and 1 plus 2 would give me 3. Okay, so I have 3/4, and 3/4 will be my final answer. I cannot reduce that fraction, so it's okay just like it is. Let's see. Let's try this with a mixed number. A mixed number is a whole number and a fraction together. So a mixed number, and for those of you who want to look at this and follow along, I'm actually in the 4th grade book, page 157. I just went way back, and I'm just pulling some problems from some of these pages. So this was page 157 in the 4th grade book, letter C. So now I have 4 and 3/6. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try that again. Fresh page here. See, 4 and 1/2. Page 157, letter C, is 4 and 1/2. 4 and 1/2 plus 6 and 1/3. And I will add here. Now, obviously, the first thing I need to do is find a common denominator with the fractions. I don't change anything with the whole numbers. So my denominator, I have a 2 and I have a 3 as my denominator. I have to have a number that is large enough for 2 to fit evenly into it and 3 to fit evenly into it. And the best number to use here is going to be 6. 6. So I bring over my whole numbers because I'm not changing anything there. But I will be changing the denominator of the fractions to a 6. And I have to find an equivalent fraction here. So this is usually how to do my next step. Okay. So here, show you where I can see this with you guys. 2 times what would have given me 6? Well, 3. 2 times 3. So 1 times 3 gives me 3 for my numerator here. And then I have a 6 here. All right. 3 times 2 would give me 6. So 1 times 2 gives me 2 here. Now I'm adding. Matter of fact, I'll write that in again. I'm adding. And I need to start off with the fraction first because I always work from left to right. And I know this is backwards, but we'll start off with adding our fraction first. So 3 plus 2 is going to give me 5. So I have 5, 6. Remember, we don't add or subtract denominators. 4 plus 6, those are my whole numbers. So what is 4 plus 6? 10. Okay, so 10 and 5, 6. Now I cannot reduce the fraction of 5, 6. So this answer would be correct. So 10 and 5, 6. Always look to make sure that to see if you can reduce a fraction. Always. Always look to see if there's an improper fraction. Is there something I need to correct there? Let me see. Let me go on. Okay, I'll give you an example here. On page 160 in your book, 4th grade, 160, section 3, letter A. Section 3, letter A. So this will be 4/5, and this is the last one, 4/5 plus 1/2. Hopefully the next video I have a little bit better setup where you guys can see everything flipped the right way. We have to find a common denominator here, obviously. We don't. This is where I am right here. 4/5 and 1/2 plus 1/2. 5 and 2, those are my denominators. Well, what number would both 5 and 2 fit evenly into? It has to be the exact same number. That number is going to be 10. Okay, number is going to be 10. And if at some point you guys need me to do a review as to how I'm coming up with the denominators, okay, or mom, dad, let me know. If at some point they're like, I don't think they're understanding where you're coming up with these numbers from, let me know, and I can either do a review or I can talk to them individually, that type of thing. We can do a Zoom video conference that way, so let me know. All right. My denominator is now going to be 10, and I have to, of course, find equivalent fractions here. Now, get to where I can see this. 5 times what gave me 10? Well, 5 times 2 gives me 10. 4 times 2 gives me 8. So my numerator is going to be 8 here. 10. So 2 times 5 gives me 10. 1 times 5 gives me 5. And you guys probably already see where I'm heading with this. 8 plus 5, that's going to be over 10. Obviously, it's going to be 13. So 8 plus 5 will be 13. My denominator is 10. Now, what is that fraction called? I have 13 tenths. 13 tenths. That is an improper fraction, and I cannot leave it that way. That is not my final answer. So in a case like that, I'll divide the denominator into the numerator, so the bottom into the top. 10 fits into 3, or 10 fits into 13, one whole time, with 3 left over. And I have to write that remainder, what's left, I have to write that as a fraction. That denominator stays as a 10. So 13 tenths would actually equal 1 3 tenths. And again, testing quizzes, even in your work in the book, that would be your final answer. Okay, so again, if you guys, I'm going to stop right there. I'm actually just going to mark this page so that I know where I left off, kind of what we talked about last. But If you guys have questions, I am more than happy to explain any part that you did not understand. So I'll mark that section for us. Later this week, we'll be doing a Zoom meeting for families so that we can familiarize ourselves some. I'm learning. This is something I am learning, something we're using with our church as well, with some meetings. So it's something that we're learning. So if you guys, I'll send out some information about that. If that's something that you guys want to participate with, families, if that's something that you guys want to do, let me know. And I don't mind doing some Zoom classes, as well as also doing these videos. If there's something that you're like, hey, Miss Ellis, I think this would be helpful, I don't mind doing a video for that. And something the videos I like for the purpose that you can go back and rewatch it. On Zoom, it's great for the interaction, but this is great for being able to go back and rewatch information for review purposes. I also encourage you guys to continue to use Abeka. If you need to back up, if you need me to give you some lesson numbers where we started talking about factors and those types of things leading into fractions, I can do that. So you can go back and watch some of those videos as well. That would be a great resource for you guys, because you're also seeing the interaction in the classroom. Many times those kids are going to have the same questions that you guys have. So it is something good. It's a good resource to use. So anyhow, let me know how I can help you guys, and I hope to talk to you guys again soon. Bye.